Welcome back to Brashonomics. Finding a guide to help you with financial decisions, to really help you navigate through these things is such a key point. I mean, people have guides in so many different aspects of life, but sometimes the people do have this do-it-yourself mentality when it comes to maybe investing or finding the house, and maybe sometimes they don't want help. Part of finding a house is also being able to make sure you're finding the right house and the house is in good shape. Kevin Hergert joins us, who is a licensed home inspector and was actually a builder of over 250 homes throughout Washington State. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you.
How are you today?
Doing great.
You got any good ski stories?
Haven't skied much this year.
No? Well, if you can get up there, it's pretty nice. When people are looking for houses, a lot of times they find a house, they have this pretty big emotional connection to one, and this inspection part of the contract typically comes up, and, you'll get a call. Where do you see is the biggest, most important things of getting that home inspection?
Basically, the purpose of the home inspection is for the buyer to know the condition of the property. A lot of people will ask me towards the end of the inspection, well, did it pass? And there really is no such thing as a pass-fail. It's really just so they know the condition of the property. And if it's not up to what they expected, then they either renegotiate with the seller or move on.
When you talk about that pass-fail, I mean, what do you think people are expecting when they're asking you that question? They want you to make a decision for them almost?
Exactly. And that is not really the role of the inspector. It's just to provide information to the client.
And so when people ask that, what do you say? Like, that's not my job?
Essentially, a lot of times they'll ask me, is it worth the price? And again, the inspector's role is not to determine the value of the house. It's just give them the condition of the property. That would be more of the job of the appraiser. And
that does, I think those are oftentimes misconstrued, the difference between the inspection and an appraisal, because typically appraiser still comes and inspects a house. And I think there's a little bit of...
Yeah, absolutely.
And, and you guys are doing nothing with price.
That is correct. We should not even be quoting the cost to repair items either.
So how would somebody go about finding so you guys are just saying what's wrong, nothing about fixing it?
That is correct. We basically, I offer suggestions to people of where to go to get the price, but rarely will I give somebody a quote on an item. That's not the inspector's job.
And so then, if you're looking at some of these items, I guess their next role, the buyer's role or next job, is really to go out and maybe find out, okay, what's all this stuff going to cost that's broken or not working?
Yeah, either that or go back to the seller and say, we'll continue, but you fix it.
And at that point in time, you hope they do, I guess. We've talked a lot about short sales and foreclosures on this show. What impact do those type of properties have on inspections?
Probably the most difficult thing for the inspector is the purchaser comes to me, the client, wanting an inspection, and they have a certain time period to complete it. By the time the bank gets utilities all active to the house, essentially de-winterizing it, they're up against a time crunch. And many times they're going back asking for an extension just because it was the seller's fault.
And so so you end up then in a house that maybe you don't want as much? I mean, where do you see some of these issues?
Well, just by the nature of them winterizing the houses, there's just a lot of issues with plumbing leaks, and it just causes a time problem.
What are some of those plumbing issues?
Has to do with pipes freezing. Houses have utilities turned off and not being properly de-winterized. And
so now in this time I guess you'd say in this time of year it's even worse, because coming in summer, probably don't have, well, you certainly don't most likely have pipes freezing.
That's correct, but they still will winterize the house, and they shut all the utilities off.
And so how does somebody then, what happens over the course of the next couple months? I mean, if you're looking at a short sale, and if let's just say that the utilities weren't turned on, right? Let's say they haven't been turned on for months. Do you tend to see more problems then coming up? I mean, through the spring and fall, spring and early summer?
Well, the problems would show up when the utilities are turned back on, but no homeowner should buy a house without the utilities active so they can be thoroughly tested.
What type of what do you mean by tested?
Basically, water in the plumbing pipes. So you can test the pressure for the domestic water lines, the waste lines, the furnace, and the water heater.
And so you end up with all these different pieces of a plumbing puzzle, I guess, and that's essentially what you're trying to then make sure all the pieces look good.
Exactly. Make sure there's nothing leaking in the house.
When you have people who are going through this inspection process, and I know we've seen it a lot, where people get emotionally involved with a house, and sometimes they turn their blinders on. You know, with your job really being to tell them what is wrong with some of these things, where do you ever draw the line in the sand and go, look, you shouldn't be buying this house. Like, this is a money pit at this point in time. I mean, do you ever take that role?
Usually, if it's to that extent, it's pretty obvious. I try to show them the issues. Most anything can be resolved with money.
No kidding.
With a few exceptions. But then the question is...
If somebody was killed in the house, murdered a few years ago, you probably need an exorcist, I suppose, a gypsy in there.
Yeah, and what it really boils down to is whose money is going to fix it, theirs or the seller's.
And so do you work with a real estate agent to help them kind of figure that out? Or, I mean, how does...
You know, I provide as much assistance as possible so they can look at the cost, give them references for other subcontractors to do the work. But again, I will never quote a repair cost.
Since you were in the building industry before you got into inspections and you had built homes, do you see different, I mean, is there a massive difference in quality of, say, plumbing and electrical in different houses? I mean, do you ever look at it and go, man, this builder did a crappy job?
Oh, absolutely. The number of new homes I do is far less than existing homes, but even with new homes, I can absolutely see the quality differences between different builders.
And where do some of those qualities lie? I mean, do you see is it in the fixture? I guess it's not necessarily the quality of product, but I mean, the actual putting this stuff together.
Usually you'll find it almost in every aspect of the house. Not in any major degree, but you start seeing crooked walls, then you see loose countertops, leaking plumbing fixtures. They all just kind of go together.
And I guess it's if you're cheap in one area, you're probably cheap in a lot of them, huh?
That's right.
And is that in the new construction? I mean, is that different than some of the older construction? Is there any real typical things you're seeing?
Well, newer construction, I think it's far better than old construction. But again, there is a wide difference in qualities among builders out there today.
And how would you discern what those biggest differences are as far as quality? I mean, crooked walls I would think is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and with new construction, it's more of a larger item. Existing homes, I do not point out workmanship defects because I'm just supposed to report on the condition of the property. New construction, I'll point out what are areas that are not in compliance with generally accepted construction practices.
So, okay, help me understand. We only have about a minute left before we have to go to break. Again, we're here with Kevin Hergert, home inspector with Hergert Inspection. What is the difference between a craftsmanship, as you call it, issue versus a quality issue or something that you would comment on?
Well, for instance, a very simple item on a new house, if I went out and found, for instance, something as rudimentary as a towel bar that is loose or crooked, I would never point that out on an existing house. In a new construction, I would.
Okay, got it. So if it is new construction, you will point some of these things out.
Correct.
If it's a home that's built in, say, the 60s or 70s and that towel rack's probably been changed 15 times, it's kind of part of the...
That's correct.
Part of the gig.
That's right.
Well, Kevin, thanks so much for joining us, and I hope you'll stick around a little bit for our roundtable here at the end.
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Yeah, when we come back, Ryan Leopold's going to join us again. And, if people are out there looking at houses, and a lot of people are, and maybe you're not sure about the inspection yet, but that first step is really kind of finding out if buying a house is right for you. Ryan Leopold's going to join us, and we're going to talk a lot about things you need to prepare to think about your mortgage. My name is Ben Brash, and you're listening to Brashonomics.